and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the GFreak Speaks podcast, episode number 42. This podcast is brought to you by absolutely nobody. So if you guys want to sponsor the podcast, hit me up, slide into the DMs. Everyone always laughs at that. I love that. The reactions that I get from everyone is priceless. So if you want to hit me with a pre-roll, mid-roll, end roll, crunchy roll, whatever you want, hit me up with it, and we can definitely get that organized. But joining us today is a very special guest in esports, the esports industry himself, Chris MAYO. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Doing good. Busy, but good.
That's good, man. That's good. You've got some serious heat in the background going on there with FaZe Clan and Heat collaboration. What is that? I didn't even see that collaboration that they did.
Yeah, it's a box that got sent to me by them. So I'll give you how about I give you the medium story? Give you the short or the long. So the medium. So I believe FaZe K, you know, the FaZe clan member who got caught out for doing the Save the Kids stuff, was actually an early investor in Heat. And the essential idea behind Heat is like get a box. You pay, you know, they're from the UK. You pay like £200, £300 for a box. Inside it will be a guaranteed £400 worth of clothing or something like that. And they're like high-end fashion. So you might have like some Gucci socks in there and a bum bag from Off-White or something. And you know, it's a little bit of a loot box, like gaming sense, right? So you pay $200 and you know you could get one of these 12 items or 3 of these 12 items or something like that. So with K's involvement, they did a partnership with FaZe Clan, which I thought was pretty cool. So they partnered FaZe gear with like high-end fashion gear. So they sent me one as an example. So I could unbox it and share on LinkedIn, etc. So I got like a pair of Off-White shorts, I got some designer socks, and that came with a FaZe crew neck and a FaZe t-shirt at the same time. So I thought it was a pretty cool collab. And to be honest, I think FaZe used it to clear a lot of their like basic stock and stuff as well. And you know, I think these high-end fashion retailers use it. You know, the shorts I got were maybe 1 or 2 seasons ago from Off-White. They're still worth like some coin, but you know, some of the more older stuff that they might be able to sell new anymore. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool idea.
That is cool, and it's cool to know that nothing goes to waste there as well. That it's always moving, always happening, and it's always being distributed to fans and the community, which is great. Obviously at a price, because nothing, you know, the world wouldn't turn without a price to things. But yeah, that's great. That's great. But let's get right into it. Who are you today?
Who am I today? So Chris is my name, MAYO is my gamer name, or SMITHY MAYO is where I sit online with stuff. So for me, I've been around in the esports and gaming industry for nigh on 14 years now, which makes me a very solid esports boomer or gaming boomer as far as the younger people are concerned. And I run a company called BIG, or Business in Games, which is essentially a marketing agency in gaming and esports. And our investors, major investors, are Playside Studios. And the technical term is they are Australia's largest publicly listed games development company. So they listed on the ASX year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, back in December 2020. And we partnered with them a while ago.
Fantastic. And so tell me a little bit about that company and what it means to be part of that company.
Sure, man. So you mean like us being part of Playside or with Playside?
Yeah, just to be part of Playside.
Yeah, sure, man. So, you know, I would say like in a way we are part of Playside in their investors and us, and they own, you know, around 27% of us, which is obviously public. And that's why I had to give you the quotation marks thing, right? Because they're a public company. So there's things you can and can't say. And I'm still learning, you know, how all that stuff works. It's a very different world in that capital market. But, you know, their EVP of sales, TJ, he's a co-director in my company. You know, they join in all of our board meetings. They help introduce us to fantastic potential clients. We've worked with them on some projects with marketing, and, you know, we can give them some advice and get some insights from time to time on where the market's heading. You know, they're releasing a game with Laserbeam and Fresh Asian at the moment. They just announced the beta. It's called World Boss, and we saw it on there, which is pretty cool. So, you know, we join in from time to time, talk to their marketing head, Michael, who's super capable. You know, they join in our business meetings, have helped us, you know, kind of scale up to where we are today. And a lot of the large business decisions get made, you know, with them in tow, especially with TJ. So if we're trying to sign a big contract, we're negotiating, or we're thinking about making a large expenditure as a company, like investing in an external biz dev agency or spending on marketing or something, he'll, you know, step in and help us out. Usually I'm kind of like the passion and the industry and the thoughts, and then he's a little bit more of the realism and the brains. Like, especially when I first started working with them, like 4-ish years ago now, a lot of the time I'd come to TJ, I'd have this like fantastic idea, I'd go to him with it, and he's like, Chris, it's not going to make any money, that's stupid. I'm like, yeah, but it's cool. He's like, yeah, I don't care about that. Like, you know, you're just going to lose a bunch of money. Like, it's all right if you lose maybe a bit of money doing something cool, but maybe not a bunch of money just because something's cool.
Yeah, I couldn't have guessed that you were the over ecstatic, enthusiastic guy out of the two. Speaking to you, but
Yeah.
tell me about explain to us listening right now on the podcast about business and gaming and what that company is and why the name change went from big to now business and gaming and where it all began with that company.
Yeah, man, for sure. So when I went out on my own, which was April 20th, 2018, it's easy to remember because it's a 420 joke for a lot of gamers out there. I had the bright idea to say, hey, I'm going to help companies enter into esports. It's this big, growing, fantastic market, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Ultimately, it was a stupid idea. In essence, because I was a young kid, in a lot of people's eyes, I was like 25, maybe, I think at that stage, 26. I had a lot of experience inside the industry, but no experience in corporate land at all. So imagine I go to Coca-Cola, right? And I'm like, hey, Coca-Cola, esports is cool. It's massive. It's huge. I'm going to help you get into it. You should pay me to do that. They're going to say, hey, can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah, go for it.
They're going to say, who the fuck are you? What the fuck is esports? And get out of my office, kid. You know what I mean? Like they don't know who I am. They don't know about the industry. You could talk about esports being a fantastic $1 billion industry, but Coke's like, we spend $1 billion on billboards globally or something like that. I don't know the numbers, right? But, you compare that to other industries and where things sit. Sports technology just in Australia is like an AUD, like $3 billion industry or something like that. So just sports tech in Australia is bigger than just esports globally, and that's where you get into esports and gaming, etc. So, I went on that pathway, had some success, worked with OVO Mobile, worked with Fox Sports, worked with Gamba on some projects a little bit, did a little bit of consultancy before GFinity launched in Australia as well for Gamba and them. But, wasn't really hitting scale because, sending out cold LinkedIn messages, but those were the answers from people like, who the hell are you and what the hell is esports? So, we took a look, we had a board meeting after the investment with Playside one day, and Jerry, the CEO, who's a very smart guy, sat down and said something very basic, which smart people do sometimes, which is like, Chris, where is your money coming from right now? And the answer was influencers. Like basically all of our revenue had come from working with NVIDIA and ASUS, a little bit with Intel and some agencies on doing marketing campaigns. And he's like, well, maybe you should just chase where the revenue is instead of trying to convince at that stage, like Mini we were talking to and the Sporting Globe and a bunch of others about how to get into esports. Yep. So, while I originally set up the company to be business and games, when we started working with Playside, it went to big esports. But for us, most of our work isn't in hardcore esports. Right now we're running the world's largest VR esports, tournament since 2018 with Veil, which is a VR FPS game. But besides that, in the past 4 years, I haven't really done a whole lot in hardcore esports. I worked a little bit in Indian esports, done a little bit some consultancy here and there with some different pieces, but most of our money's been made doing external marketing services, social media, work with crypto, and, the wider gaming, video games market as a whole. So it just made a lot of sense for us to go back to being called business in games. And, it would even be on a sales from a business side of things. People would reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, Chris, I know you only do esports, but will you consider, running our social media and doing influencers? And the answer is usually, well, that's actually mostly what we do. Yeah. Esports is a part of our business, but it's not our entire business. And you see that with everyone, right? Like even ESL in Australia, they ran what was it, the Minecraft convention thing that happened at Sydney. They do the Aussie Millions Crown Poker tournament production. They did a CrossFit tournament throughout COVID as well, when the CrossFit Games went all online. So, even like the largest esports company in the world, quote unquote, which ESL is, they don't even do necessarily 100% esports either. So it makes sense.
It's interesting to see how things can cross collab and cross pollinate, and the communities really, meet each other head on with each other. It's great to see that we're not just bound within the parameters that is what we know it as esports. And that's the really cool part about it. So ESL working in a fitness industry, you're like, holy shit, since when? And that's actually news to me because that's interesting, but you wouldn't, it makes sense because the production value there from ESL and what they can provide, as seen from Dreamhack on the weekend, which we'll get into later, but they can do it. They can do more than what a regular TV company can produce, and look no further. It's great.
Yeah, if you look at like traditional sports, and then you look at like esports, there's things that people can learn from each of the sides, right? Like sports does commercialization much better. Sports, I think, does fandom much better than esports, unless like maybe your phase or a bit of 100 Thieves, maybe. But, I think sports can learn a lot from broadcast from esports. Like I'm a massive MMA fan, watch a lot of the UFC, and I would say that like in ESL ANZ production, like Dreamhack, which is almost, like on a lower level than a global, like an IEM or like a Dota 2 TI, is still better quality than a UFC production. A multi-billion-dollar company that's owned and on the public stock exchange is better. It's worse than what ESL Australia can do with like, what do they have, like 40 employees or something like that, UFC has 40 people just in production, let alone like in the, in the rest of it that's going on.
Oh, it's insane. And we kind of, the issue with esports to a degree is that we're kind of our own biggest enemy, because everything is to such a high production value that as soon as you see like an announcement or reveal or something, if it's not to like a 1080p fucking Black Magic camera, then they're just going to skip past it. It's ridiculous. It is insane.
Yeah. Some advice I've given to people is like small, say like an internet cafe event, right? Which I ran a lot when I was new to the space. Like it helped me cut my teeth a lot on the esports industry as a whole. And people would come to me and say, Chris, I'm running like this small LAN party with like a $500 COD tournament, or I'm running like a CSGO LAN at an internet cafe. Give me some advice for like production and running a stream, and how much should I invest and what should I do? Yeah. And sometimes my answer is nothing. Don't even do one. Because I think sometimes if you have a crappy production, like what I used to run at these events at Mid-City here in Melbourne, we'd have a 16-team or 32, 16 team CSGO tournament at Mid-City in Melbourne, and it would literally be in a broom cupboard that didn't have a door with a webcam that was duct taped to the window. And then I had like a couple of posters behind me, and Jeremy and I, who was my intern at the time, would just be like shoulder to shoulder, commentating on a PC wearing like a headset like this. You can't, I think you're almost better doing none these days, unless that's your brand, like unless you're like Home Story Cup where it started, or like when Beyond the Summit started before they became like the hyper professional guys they are today, like a bedroom thing. Like it's fine if you're a single streamer and that's part of your shtick, like Speed. He doesn't have, he's huge, one of the biggest in the world, and he doesn't have a professional setup really at all. It's just a bedroom and him doing crazy stuff, but that's what people come to expect. But you're right, like it is hard because these productions are expensive. I mean, we're paying for it right now with Miami Val Major. It's a lot. I know how much it's costing, and it's costing a lot.
How much is it costing?
I can't tell you exactly, but
come on.
Someone asked me, like I did a panel at Dreamhack, which you mentioned before, and Carmody asked me on the thing, like, how much does it cost to run like a proper event? If you're going to run like a tier 1 esports event, so you've got like, OG there and Fnatic and FaZe and whatever, you can easily spend $1 million just on the tournament without spending, that's not including like player travels and transport and things like that. And especially if you're doing Counter-Strike, there's the Counter-Strike Pro Players Association, CSPPA, and they have a good guide where you can see like they have minimum travel requirements that are expected in there, like minimum level of flights, minimum hotels, minimum prize money depending on where they're going to, all that kind of stuff too. So if you think about like Intel Extreme Masters, when that was run in Sydney, think about how much that would have cost to fly out all of those teams. What was there, like 14 international teams? So if you're paying for like 5, you're probably paying, I can't remember what you can look it up, the CSPPA stuff's public, but let's say you're paying for 5 players plus a coach plus 1 manager, like 7 people. Like I'm flying to Miami for the Miami Val Major. It's costing me like 2.6K or more just to get there and back, not including accommodation. And then like IEM Sydney was at Sydney Olympic Park, which is crazy expensive even for a budget hotel to stay per night. So think about how much, think about how much that's costing. Like with the MVM, we're paying for the flights and accommodations for the teams, but thankfully for us, 3 North American teams, 1 European qualified, so it's all right. One of the guys is literally getting $150 for Uber to go to and from, for the finals. And we have a good corporate rate for the hotels. It's quite cheap, but imagine if like 5 teams from Australia qualified and we'd have to pay, like it would just blow out the budget. We'd spend 50K on flights, alone.
I know.
Let alone, paying for accommodation, that kind of stuff. So it can become expensive quite quickly.
It's crazy because the amount of money spent on getting players there is most likely double the amount of the prize money. Like it is insane. It really is insane.
I think for MVM, we're spending about half. But we've only got 4 teams at the finals. A lot of these other, I mean, you look at Dota 2 TI, that's 16 teams, right? They got to fly them all to, like when it was in China, like how many of the teams were actually in China? They're in the in there, like 3, was it something like that? So you're flying people from Europe and the US. Not cheap to fly all those people, and they do everything. They put them up. I mean, there has been some questions about quality of food and stuff in the past with Dota 2 TI, but they generally have them in nice hotels. They pay for their transfers, like all that stuff. We need a shuttle bus to take them from the hotel lobby where they're at to the tournament. Like all that stuff adds up after a while. And that's always been a really interesting thing for me with esports, because that's the expected now. It never used to be the norm. You never used to have to pay for any of the teams, but now, especially when publisher funding has come in, like that's expected and the norm for teams to get all that stuff covered. And it's just I don't say it's good or bad. It's just an interesting observation for me. Is that's like a massive line item that didn't exist before.
Oh, for sure,
like that 50K, 100K, you got to pay for travel. Like that used to not have to be a thing. It didn't exist.
Absolutely, and it kind of takes me back to a point that I had with my previous guest, Waltzy, from the last episode, is that with one of his points that he was making as a player in Apex trying to be picked up by other teams and other orgs, and he was looking everywhere, and he said there is no chance I was looking at an Australian org because there's no way that they would actually help me get overseas, blah, 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 blah. And he kind of made the point, we kind of came in a mutual agreement with it, but not with this question exactly, but it was more along the lines of, like, where do you make money when you create an esport org? What is the point of actually creating one to start with? And how do you make money with it? What are your thoughts?
So, like, a funny story for you, like in 2018, every investor I talked to wanted to buy an esports team, especially in Australia, but also globally. And that's how I started working with Playside, actually. I came on as a consultant for them, did a little bit of just talking with Jerry and TJ. Jerry's the CEO, TJ was the COO at that time, and now he's the head of sales. And then did like a half-day seminar for them, which is something I used to do for corporate clients. So I used to, in a half-day seminar, I would teach them, like, here's the esports ecosystem, the travel of $1, like what's a team, a league, an event, what's a sponsor, how do they make money, what are content creators, just like a 101. On gaming and esports as a whole, and they always wanted to buy an esports team every time. And a lot of the complexities with having an esports team, which, like an Australian example, Chiefs do really well, 100 Thieves do quite well, is like picking and choosing what games you invest into. Because imagine you overinvest into like Heroes of the Storm, and then Blizzard just deletes that esports league overnight without telling anyone. That's what the reports say. Kind of similar to Paladins as well, right? Paladins pretty much just got deleted. In a very short time frame. I don't know how much notice was there, but it was there 1 minute, gone the next. So, if you look at like traditional sports teams, the ways they make money, and we're actually releasing a free industry report soon with the Sports Tech World Series, and this covers part of it too. But like these traditional sports teams will make, like an NRL team, an NFL team in the US will make 51% or more of its income from the broadcast rights deal. And I don't know if that 51% exactly average, but just saying that it's a lot. They'll make a lot from that. Delete that. That doesn't exist in esports. There's been small deals like, Google signed a deal with Blizzard, but it really seemed to be that it was about servers, and they kind of just bundled in casting the Overwatch League on YouTube exclusively. Facebook did one with ESL many, many moons ago, but that was before Facebook was ready to really do game streaming. So it had like a 75% drop in viewership.
It's still fucking shit.
There you go. And they dropped off too. So, that doesn't exist. And then another big portion of it, because I remember I did a bit of consultancy for this years ago, so I'm trying to bring up the memories from 2019. And another big portion of it is your home ground, which also doesn't exist. So getting sponsors for your home ground, Marvel Stadium, whatever, getting food and drink, like food and beverage sales for your home ground, selling season tickets to your home ground, selling merchandise at your home ground. I could say home ground forever, but that doesn't exist either. That was the aim of like Call of Duty and Overwatch, was to move to that kind of model, and even Gfinity in Australia, right, in a sense, to move to that model. But that doesn't exist either. So you delete like the two largest revenue lines. So then what are you left with? So you're left with prize money, of which, most teams will take 0 to like 15%. There are really outliers, like Booger, when he won the Fortnite World Cup, there was a big report that came out that his team took like 40 or more or something like that. There was another team I heard of recently I was talking to, that they were very like unknown team where their sponsor or their org was taking like 85% of their prize money or something like that. But no matter how much you're taking, it's not a reliable way to make your money. Another large way is like sticker sales. So if you've got like a CSGO team or something that makes it into a major, you can make sticker sales. That used to be like at the start of CSGO, like 30 grand. That's now hundreds of thousands of dollars just if you make the major, in pretty much guaranteed in a way sticker sales. And then you've got sponsorship that comes through, and then other little bits here and there. I think merchandise makes a great. It's a great like infographic for me to post on LinkedIn, and really cool to say that FaZe Clan sold $1 million worth of champion merch in an hour and $2 million in a day. But if you look like what's $2 million in revenue to FaZe Clan when they're losing, so much per year, or they're paying their CEO $300 or $600 grand? I think it was $300 grand. He paid himself a $300 grand bonus or something one of the years. So that
well done,
million,
man.
that $2 million that you just earned in merchandise sales in a day is a fantastic number, but at what margin? Let's say it's 10% margin at worst, or let's say it's even 50% margin. That's $1 million, and you've paid pretty much all that just to your CEO. So how many of those launches do you have to do? You compare that to like the multi-billion-dollar rights deals that even happen in Australia for sport that trickle down. Like, that's a big number difference. So, and then the last thing that people bet on, like the MLS, the soccer or football in the US, is a great example of that. Is getting team rights, growing the team, and then having that equity in the team name that you can then sell on to like another rich person to own the team. So that's why franchise leagues exists, for example, because they will pass down some of that revenue from the publisher and the sponsors and stuff down to the teams if they make a profit. Hopefully they do. But also you've got a spot in the LCO in Australia, in the Overwatch World League. You've got a spot in the LEC that you can then sell for a bunch of money. So like if someone wants to research that, Misfits, which is a Miami-based, or they're like in Boca Raton, but close to Miami, Florida-based esports team, sold their LEC spot recently to the Spanish team whose name I can't remember, but if you look it up, Misfits sold LEC. I'd Google exactly that, and then there's some theorizers about how much they sold and some reports and sources, but you can see like how much these kind of slots are worth, and they're worth millions.
Yeah, wow, it really is insane. And come to think of it, I actually went over my head when we just won the League of Legends championship, and I'm like, shit. Now just thinking about it, that we would have had to pay a fee to get that LCO spot, and so would every other team that has done it. That's why Kanga bought out Legacy, I believe, so that they could actually jump into the esport itself and take over their thing. Although, the name change, should they have kept the Legacy or should they have gone with Kanga? Who knows? That was obviously up to them, and that's all been told, said and done. But it's insane. It really is insane. And when you sell it to someone like, this is how you make money in esports, people are just like, but it's so confusing. But when you look at something like the Call of Duty League, for example, $25 million just to buy a spot. Like, that is ridiculous. And then you've got to then you've got overheads, which is player fees and all that type of stuff. You've got to set up a home stand. Not every team had a home stand this year, which is interesting. So obviously I think the ticket sales just get promoted across the whole board. But it's heavily FaZe, Optic, and possibly a bit of New York carrying that whole league when it comes to all that type of stuff. But where do you make money on a league like that? It really is, like right now, 3 years in, they're not drawing massive crowds on YouTube. The YouTube deal was possibly good for the league, but not for the teams.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make money off something like that when the entry price is so high to begin with.
Yeah.
Like in comparison to that. And like, if I flip the question and say like, how does a league make money? Because obviously then it has to make money to pass down to the teams.
Yep.
Esports is inherently a loss leader. So if your entire business model is built on a loss leader, then that could become a concern, I would say. Like, you boil it down to real basics, right? Esports inherently is a loss leader, a user acquisition and retention exercise. And the hard thing is like, how do you attribute an acquired user or a retained user to esports versus something else? I don't think that's always clear for publishers and developers. Like I used to play like semi-pro CSGO, even before the days of like, Alistair, who was just playing on stage. He used to be a literal kid that would ask me to play with him because he knew I was a good player and he wanted to learn, like rightfully so at that time. And, in those kind of days, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but basically what I'm saying is like, a publisher needs to justify the investment into the league to be able to acquire and retain users. So for me, like after I quit CSGO, I started playing Dota 2. Dota 2 was always too hard to get into. The skill entry for Dota 2 is insane.
Crazy.
But the reason I started playing, and I left League of Legends to play Dota 2 back in like 2013 or something, is because I watched the International 4 and it was so fantastic and I got sucked up in the whole thing. It was a fantastic tournament, had a huge prize pool, like the biggest in esports at the time, et cetera, et cetera. And I really enjoyed that tournament, started playing off that. Am I an acquisition, can my money now spent in Dota be attributed to esports? Because I don't. I have some friends who run teams like Team Secret and stuff, and I wear their merch that they send me, but I don't really buy merch in Dota. I don't watch any tournament really except for TI. Like I follow Dota and Reddit, but that's about it. And then I just play and I buy the battle passes and compendiums because I like the little missions that come with them and the cavern crawls. So that becomes hard. So then Dota, if they're doing like a profit and loss sheet and they're saying like, okay, we spent this much on esports, is Chris's money attributed to this or not? I don't know. Like it's hard to say. So a lot of the time to make money off these leagues is like it has to have publisher support pushed down from it. It has to have Valve funding prize pools for minors and majors and doing TI. It needs to have Ubisoft running events. It needs to have Riot Games taking everything internally. And there's obviously those two different models, right? Where Valve will fund some other events to help them operate, like minors and majors that are run by PGL or whatever. Or Riot is like, fuck you, we'll do everything. You can't do tournaments for our game.
Exactly.
We'll do it because we know we can control the quality and do it professionally. So, the answer for like a league is it needs publisher support first and foremost. But I think, a lot of the publishers are either asking themselves now or will be asking themselves, why are we spending 5, 10, 15, $20 million a year on esports? How do we justify exactly that spend? Because it's not like a Google Ads campaign where you can say, well, I spent $3 and then I acquired Jacko and I know that his lifetime value as a customer to me is worth 200. So fantastic deal. Let's go. I'm way ahead on the LTV, but it's much harder with esports. And that goes down to esports teams. Like I interviewed the Astralis COO and he said, like, we are not a CPM company. Like we're an emotions and we're an excitement company and we sell that, vision and dream of esports and the attachment of the cool things that we do to that. Yeah. So how do you attribute that? Like if you're Audi, who's to sponsor them, like, okay, we're sponsoring emotions, so it works for an experimental budget where you're just trying to like try out new things and it's cool and it does content. You might get some good views, but also it might not. And it's like, well, I can't attribute, if I'm Razer, I can't attribute keyboard sales necessarily to like a team I sponsor, like EG or something. So what do I attribute to that? And that's the question that gets asked sometimes. I'm sure it's the same with sport too. I remember talking to a brand, they probably don't really name, but I remember talking to a brand in Australia and I asked them like, why do you sponsor that NBL team? And they said emails. They want users. And it's like a local team and they're a local company and they work with a local region and they're like, we want user acquisition of emails. That's a major reason why we sponsor them.
Yeah, emails. Like email subscription of, hey, here's what's in our newsletter, here's 10% off, or those type of things, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, okay. And try to audience transfer from those emails to their own because, they offer a local service. So, like, another example, I know this company who does, like, surveys and experience stuff with a lot of AFL teams, and they worked with, like, Ford or Toyota or someone like that, right?
Yep.
And they did a survey through them where they sent it out and said, hey, you could win, like, let's say it's Collingwood, you could win, like, a Magpies prize pack of, like, a jersey and a free ticket to a game or whatever. You just got to fill out this, and it's like, how old is your car, and when are you thinking about buying a new car, and where do you live? And then that, that survey response answers get shot out to the local Ford or Toyota dealership and they'll call them up and say, hey, Jacko, you did a survey. You said you're looking to buy a new car soon because you're driving like a 1982 Toyota Corolla that's about to fall apart. Well, we got a sale on it, Ford. Do you want to buy one?
Okay. It's quite interesting the way the marketing tactics that they use now, and especially with the vertical content that seems to be pushed into our faces everywhere. Like, you've got TikTok, the Trojan horse of all apps. Then you've got Twitter, you've got Instagram that is kind of a competitor to TikTok, just trying to chase it because it was such a industry leader in the space. Now it's shitting itself because it was comfortable and now it's uncomfortable. So the techniques of getting people on site is incredible. But even LinkedIn, like how often do you see creators on LinkedIn nowadays compared to about 5 years ago?
More, but I think not enough.
Yep.
I guess for those people who don't know me, which is probably everyone, we make a lot of content on LinkedIn, have just about to hit 33,000 followers now, of like targeted people in the industry. And it's a way that we've made 80 to 90% of my sales of my business since 2018 is all through people reaching out to me on LinkedIn because we create like consistent high quality content. We push out to people, they engage in it and say, hey, maybe Chris knows what the fuck he's talking about. And we want to do something, we want to work with influencers. We'll reach out to him and do some work on there. And it's also because the quality of content on LinkedIn is so shockingly poor. And someone explained to me really well, business people are not creative. So if you have like an ounce of creativity in your bones, go and make some content on LinkedIn and you just blow everyone else away. But I did like a video about this, about, athletes coming onto the platform, TikTokers, like Jade Can Dance is a friend of mine. She's got like 3.1 million on TikTok. She got huge because she did like the first spooky, scary skeleton dance. She like went from nothing to 1 million followers like straight away. And she made an account and just blew me out of the water in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Because people on LinkedIn are like, oh my God, this is the real deal. Like this is the actual, we all talk about working with creators. We all talk about like famous people. This is an actual creator. They're the real person on here. Yep. There's other like, if you're into MMA, a lot of the city kickboxing fighters are on LinkedIn, but it's not them posting. It's actually their management company. Yep. But they get huge engagement of just literally posting like, can't wait for my fight. They'll get like 1,000 likes or something. They got Eugene Behrman, who's the coach, will do like, yeah, we had a good camp. And then he'll get like, 700 likes on a post, which is just crazy, for LinkedIn standards, because it's like, wow, this is the real guy. Like Eugene, trains a current world champ and multiple other like championship level contenders in the UFC. Like this is the real dude. Like I want to engage with his content kind of thing. So yeah, more creators should definitely be on that platform, but you get a lot more business out of it too. You'll be able to reach out directly to the business heads. They'll be able to talk directly to you. You'll be able to talk directly to them. I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely. And that's what I personally found as well, just making a LinkedIn just a year ago now, not even getting connected there. But I haven't really landed any deals through there. And the only reason I use LinkedIn is just purely to update my work status and what I'm doing and who I'm working with and experience and all that type of stuff. I've never done a post. So is it bad for me now as someone that I guess is going to be fresh at making a post? Is it bad for me now to do some flashback of work that I've done or things that I've done in the industry or companies that I've worked with? Or like, what's your advice to myself and others that have just wanted to make their first post on LinkedIn that are in the gaming industry?
Yeah, I can't remember what the exact numbers are, but wasn't there something that was like, 3% of Twitter users make 85% of the tweets on the platform or something like that? And as far as I understand, it's even worse on LinkedIn, as in like the numbers even more skewed. It's like 1% of people like ever post or post regularly or something like that. So just by posting, you're already winning, like ahead of everybody else. And like the way that I started posting was quite literally, I would read an article that was interesting to me, and then I would say, well, if it helped me, it's probably going to help someone else, so I would share it.
Yep.
And then I'd be like, well, hope, someone else, I learned something in this about, a new investment or a launch or a product or whatever in the market that I work in. I would just share it and be like, hey, this article was cool. Maybe you should read it too. And then then I kind of went from there. I started breaking down articles a little bit more, or I would dot pointify them. And so, people would be able to understand more about the article or understand the whole article without reading the whole thing, just by reading a couple dot points. And then we went into custom content, and then I would start like giving some more flavor to the stories. I would add like a little bit on extra, et cetera, so they could learn more from me than even if they read the article. It kind of goes from there. But just find something simple at the start and stick with it. Okay. If you want to share like your experience, as a creator on a platform, if you want to share like, cool, you're obviously on stage at Dreamhack doing a bunch of stuff there. Share a picture of that. People will eat that kind of stuff up. They love, people love, and the algorithm loves achievements. That people love celebrating like success stories, but people also are interested in learning on that platform. And like I said, because the quality of content is so shockingly poor, like if you can share some good quality content, you'll have a lot of cut through. So I have this like battle with myself all the time on LinkedIn where I know a lot of people who get a shitload more likes than I do. But I know that the people I'm getting likes from are the ones that I want to reach out to, because LinkedIn will tell you like who's reading your posts. It'll tell you like their job titles, their locations, locations, and companies. So I know that when I'm making posts, I'm reaching people who are business development manager, CEO and founder, executive, blah, like, sales lead, social and marketing, like that kind of stuff. Those are the people that I want to be reaching. I don't need to reach like recruiters or like outsourced, IT agencies and that crap that messages you all the time that you just have to ignore. It's a shitty part of being on LinkedIn, right? It's being sales pitched all the time.
Oh, it's a pain.
But I know that if I get 100 likes on a post, which is, a good amount for me, I'll know that out of that 100 people, like 70 or 80 of them are the people that I actually want to be reaching out to. And I know that I've got some other friends who create more like very generic business content, but you go through like their likes or you go through their comments and you'll just realize that they're not people that they're going to get any value out of, like attaching to that. So it's like being followed almost by bots.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of more important to your point, to kind of build a brand on LinkedIn over anything else to a degree. Obviously have your communities and your backing on the socials such as Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. But it's just as important to build that LinkedIn profile and connect and just add people. It's so important because you hit out of your 100, you're hitting 70% of people that you really want to hit, and that could lead to future opportunities and overseas growth and a different market, which you may not be able to tap into with other social platforms. So I definitely agree, and now I'm kind of motivated to put a post on LinkedIn. So thank you.
I would say,
not sure where to start.
I'd say just make one post a week.
Okay.
Like, and you can develop a formula. Like, we have a formula of what times we post and how many, because, we obviously, it's our main platform. The same as like, if you're on Twitch, you have a formula of when you're going to go live, what types of games you're going to play and why and when. Like, we do the same, right? But I would start just by making 1 or 2 posts a week. And if you really want to, you can set up a buffer account and you can, for free, attach your LinkedIn to it and you can just queue them up. That's where we do all of our posts from. I control the majority of the content on there. But, we kind of have, within our company, we have 4 staff which have a touch point on my LinkedIn as a whole, 5 maybe sometimes. But the commander of it, I guess, of that content direction is me as far as that stuff goes. But yeah, man, just make a post a week. And for you, I would say start off by posting, who you are would be a good one. Like, here's who I am and what I do, like on Twitch and the kind of games I play, maybe a cool clip of you. Another one would be you on stage at Dreamhack. That's a great one. When you sign with the Chiefs, like an announcement graphic, that's another great one. Yeah, I'd start off with that kind of stuff, and then maybe you can sprinkle in a little bit of, hey, I'm a creator and I've seen all these people signing with YouTube. Here's why I would like to do that or wouldn't like to do that. Or, you can start adding some opinions if you want to, or you can just share news. A lot of my thing is I'm good at conversation starting, so I will share things with a question, but I'll very rarely share things with my opinion on them, unless someone pays or asks me directly in the comments. Pays me as a consultant, like on a professional sense, or will like ask me in the comments, like, Chris, what do you think of this? And even then, a lot of the time I won't answer kind of my direct thoughts because it's not up to me. Like, someone asked me at Dreamhack on a panel, like, would you ever do gambling, pornography, alcohol, tobacco, type work like in the industry, or do you think others should? And I was like, it's a morals question. Like, I don't need to answer that. It's up to you to decide whether you want to do that or not. So I'm not here to tell people how to live, but I'll give my direct opinion on things that I've done or something like that.
Yeah, understood. And you're playing the neutral ground as well, so you can't really be attacked at from either direction. Definitely a neutral party there. I rate it. I respect it.
I tell my girlfriend all the time is I don't care enough either. I just don't care enough to take a side on most of these things.
You're the shit starter, bro. You're the shit starter. You're saying, I put a question out there, bro. You're the flint to the fire, bro. Okay, to the Kindle.
That's what Jake Lucky's getting at the moment, right? Like on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen. He's getting hammered for like just asking questions. I thought that was really interesting because his thing too is he's even more neutral than me. I'll at least take some sort of stance and stuff and share, like, especially if there's like, people being dicks to like women in games and things like that. I fucking hate that because I got a few girlfriends who've been gamers as well. So I've seen it secondary, I guess, through their eyes, and it's shitty. But yeah, for him, his thing is definitely never ever take a stance about anything ever, which I think is maybe a little bit too far, which is why he's in a bit of hot water. But his content's great. I get some of my content from him too. I learn a lot from him. But he seems a bit hot water for that at the moment. Yeah, that allegedly with speed and that kind of stuff. Like, people are going ham. I feel sorry for him at the moment, actually.
Like, people accuse him of saying that, oh yeah, you've been telling people to go attack this person, or like, no one ever really does that unless you're XQC. But it's interesting because all he is kind of doing is just reporting news, and I know that Keemstar and him don't like each. Oh, well, Keemstar doesn't like him, but it's interesting because all he is just reporting news. Yeah.
Who knows, man? And people will make up their own mind about stuff all the time.
Oh, for sure.
That's why I said, like, a lot of the time I just don't care enough about, like, that kind of stuff. Obviously, like, people on Twitter especially are so polarizing, like, back and forth. I just don't care enough. It's the same with, like, I posted a deadlifting video on LinkedIn today, and then I got a bunch of DMs and comments from people giving their advice on my lifting form, and I just usually like it and then move on. I just don't give a shit enough to complain, like, to argue with them. Like, one of the guys I did because I know him quite well, but besides that, like, there's just no point.
Was the deadlift posted on LinkedIn with what's your thoughts on my form, and then you just fucking left it?
It wasn't even, and obviously it never is. It's funny because I never get that. I never get that on Twitter. Like, no one will ever give you unsolicited lifting advice on Twitter. A lot of people will on Facebook, but honestly, it's the worst on LinkedIn out of every platform. I'll get the most, like, I'll get like an essay. I got like an essay from someone once. I wouldn't say it, but A social media essay. It was like 8 or 9 sentences of like advice, and I'd be like, "Bro, I'm good." That was the guy I replied to. He's like, gave me all this advice, and I was like, none of that stuff you said is actually what I'm doing. It's right. Did 130 for 8. I think I'm doing it right. Like, I just don't. Yeah.
It's quite funny that. It's quite funny that. But transitioning from this conversation, fitness and all that type of stuff, that's obviously a big part of your life as well. Following your journey, myself being a gym nut, I have seen, I think since like just before COVID, you started getting into more weights or sharing that journey with people. How important is it for you to go and work out?
Oh man, yeah, it's huge for me. So my girlfriend is a competitive powerlifter, like an amateur competitive powerlifter, you could say. She's doing her first meet in a couple of weeks actually, and she has a nationals qualifying total that she should easily be able to make, which is awesome. So we work out quite a lot together. And for her and I, it was on and off a lot, but then around COVID time is when we really turned it on. So I've been lifting on and off since I was like 21. I'm turning 31 this year, but we have a couple of years on and maybe more years off, like on and off. But for me, it's been pretty consistent since around COVID start time. And for me, like doing a lot of work and being very busy, it keeps me sane, I think, or at least I tell myself that it keeps me sane. But I enjoy it, man. I enjoy hitting the new numbers. I enjoy the way it makes me feel. I enjoy having like some extra set of purpose of stuff to do, but I think I could serve to go less doing a lot of these powerlifting workouts, like helping my girlfriend do prep for comp at the moment. We're at the gym at Saturday for 2 hours and 5 minutes. I think that's what my Fitbit told me for our workout, which was just it was too much. It's too long. It's trying to fit that in with mobility stuff because I sit way too much and have nerd neck and have tight hips and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. I've never heard that. I love that.
You haven't heard that before?
Nerd neck. I got it
bad. Yeah, the one where like you look from the side and someone's neck is like this because
dimple.
they're always like
they're
always like on their phone. Yeah, I'm trying to correct that at the moment. I got it bad, especially I actually got it from my time as a CS:GO semi-pro, I guess you could say. I used to have such a sore neck that I'll get like shooting pain at the end of like a tournament day. Trying to like move my head around and stuff in certain ways.
Posture check for everyone out there. Sit up straight.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny, man. That is so funny. But look, man, how good was Dreamhack the other weekend? Like that was unreal for me personally. Like my personal experience, that was a real high weekend. Being able to the job opportunity that ESL gave myself it didn't exist until they kind of learnt that I was interested in it. So they kind of made that vacancy for myself to host like those stages at Margaret Court, like those panels that you're on. But then also MC and hype up the stage on that other centerpiece and whatnot. How important was it for you to see the community come together at an event like that in Australia?
Yeah, it's good, man. Like bums on seats are always the best. So like if you think from like a brand perspective, the best was always taking someone to IEM who'd never like been to a tournament before, because IEM was obviously in Kudos Bank Arena, it was a big stadium, like all that kind of stuff. And this was maybe like a step down in some senses because the tournaments were like, a couple thousand seats with like split, for the tournaments. But using IEM as like a golden example, you could see it like click in people's minds when they go there. And they go like, oh shit, this is real. It's like a nightclub mixed with like a concert mixed with like a basketball match at the same time. And they would really understand it because you can show them unlimited amount of videos and all that kind of stuff, but they don't seem to get it until they go there in person. So Dreamhack was a good flavor of that too. And I think, it was great too. I really enjoyed the more condensed nature of it versus like where MEO was a bit more spread out with Melbourne Arena, and partially because that exhibition centre wasn't available during the last MEO. We did a bit of consultancy for JB Hi-Fi too, so I got a little bit of inside info like around their sponsorship of MEO and stuff. But yeah, it's awesome to see, man. And like you said, ESL always puts on a really good show. As far as like all the production and the quality of the set and stage and sound and all that kind of stuff, it was really good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And that monster booth was awesome too. First time they've ever really done anything like that in gaming in Australia. I mean, haircuts on a booth, that was sick. The basketball shooting, like arcade stuff on the booth too. That was really cool. Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, look, as a Red Bull guy, it was okay.
I'm waiting on my monster fridge to get here. Actually,
I'm kind of bound to say, it is okay.
We're gonna get them to step it up next time. Hey, last time, Red Bull usually brings like that card, like packs and stuff. So they got to step it up with a full booth next time.
I think think that they will. I reckon. I know that Red Bull's going to be at PAX, so that's going to be interesting to see what they bring there and and go there for their activation.
I applied for that job many moons ago. They're esports heads, so hopefully they're.
Ooh, yeah. Who got it? Who's out there? Where they at? Where they at? Get him.
It's a fighting games guy got it instead of me, but that's all right.
Fuck that guy. How do you reckon that we can grow Dreamhack to be a bigger scale?
I think it's on Father's Day. That's always kind of hard, right? It's like who wants, I ended up doing Father's Day duties on Sunday instead of going, like with my girlfriend's family and stuff. So that's maybe change. I don't know, but I think more so promoting like that family atmosphere, I think would be good. But it's hard to balance that. Like, how do you balance like shooting and killing people in Rainbow Six Siege and CS:GO with like, hey, kids should come to our event? PAX is obviously quite serious about that because I've exhibited at PAX a lot. And you have to, if you've got things at MA, they have to be gated like physically, so you can't see it. So you'll see like some of the horror games will literally be inside a shell of a booth with solid walls, and you can't see unless you show your ID, and you can go in and play the game that's releasing. So that's a hard thing to balance, but I really feel like that's a big thing. I've got some friends who brought from the business community who brought their kids, like a guy from Nike I met up with. He brought his kid to the last MEO. One of our advisors, Andrew Walton, who's part of like the sports, he's on the board of Vic Sport and does a lot of stuff in the sports industry. He brought his kids to the last MEO and stuff as well. And they had a great time checking out just the Minecraft and Rocket League stuff and the JB Hi-Fi section. Like, I think that's a great way to help grow it. And that, it's a big thing that PAX does, and it's a big thing that EB Expo used to do as well. Sunday they called was like family day. At EB Expo. So I think that's a great thing to focus on, and it's bringing the younger, newer generations. Maybe you can have like a there's been Splatoon tournaments, or maybe you can bring Rocket League. Like kids, there's one thing I've learned, even if kids don't know what it is before, they fucking love to watch Rocket League live. Kids like flock to it like insanely. I don't know why. It's just like, it's some crack to them. It's crack to the child mind is like seeing Rocket League. But doing a cool Rocket League tournament there or something would be awesome. I don't know if that's the direction they want to go. Like, I don't know if they want to go more hardcore even after this. And maybe that's a way, like going more like IEM and stuff. But for me, like if you want big crowds there, you got to get families to bring the 12-year-olds, the 11s, the 10s, the 9s, the 8s, but then you need appropriate stuff for them. It's hard to have an after party. It's hard to have CS:GO. Like it's almost half a new show for them. But that's what I really think. Like bringing the families would be awesome.
Absolutely, and it'd be good if we had like even bigger creators that appeal to a younger demographic. The only person I can think of that has a young demographic that's a big creator with thousands is like Aussie Antics. With Fortnite.
Yeah, Aussie Antics. Yeah, Lachlan would be cool too, from Lachlan Power. As well.
Yeah, those two.
Because he crosses over with both too, right?
He might be at PAX, I think, Lachlan. Same as Aussie
I'd
Antics.
say probably. Because Lachlan crosses over both too, right? Like he has an esports team and he's a huge creator, and he's obviously, like I've seen meetups of his, audience is super young. Yeah, getting other, and depending on the cost-benefit ratio, getting an international guest, getting Orion's Toys there. That's obviously on a huge level. But
huge.
Getting like getting a Jacksepticeye, or getting someone who has that real appeal with like the youngsters to come along. Like, man, I remember I met up with like a Liberal Party, very senior member in Victoria. And we talked a whole bunch about how his kids were just like so damn hyped to go. Like I think it was Dan TDM was doing a tour in Australia at the time, because he didn't, it was like it was on a plight to like educate, boring politicians about like what gaming and stuff was. This was like 2018 time, and I could just see it click in his mind where he was like, "Yeah, my kids, all they want to do is talk about Minecraft, and then when their kids come over, when their friends come over, all they want to do is play Minecraft. So maybe it's not just some silly little thing that just my kid and just his friends does. Maybe it's every fucking kid plays Minecraft. So maybe I should look into that with like, I don't know, helping Landsets. There was a lot of ideas we talked about back then. But bringing someone over like that who can appeal to like the younger audience, I think is an awesome idea. A huge Minecraft creator, a huge Roblox creator, a huge like Fortnite creator, but more of like a younger side, not like a ninja, like someone who appeals to more like the 12-year-olds. I think that would be great.
It's something a little bit different as well. Like a lot of parents frown upon the gaming and whatnot. And if you say, well, you don't frown upon your kid running around and wanting to kick the football all the time, or playing piano, you won't crack the shits at him for playing that for 2 hours, but you will with gaming. I get the argument. I totally get both sides of it, because it does cause damage if it's not moderated. But it's kind of finding that moderation as well. So not having a toxic relationship with your children moving forward, and oh, fuck you, mum and dad, if you're not letting me, or hiding the controller, or things like that. which causes your children to rebel. It's kind of having that fine line, which is very hard and very delicate to balance between. But it is very important to build that fan base that is young, because if you get a 10-year-old, well, you've got them at least for 20 years if they love esports, because they start having a family at 30, so you've got them for 20 years from when they're 10. So being able to hit that market is absolutely huge, and educating them and getting them involved that should be the target for sure.
Yeah, and it's understanding, right? Like, I did a panel with some people who do like high school esports and even down to like primary school esports, and the answer from them is like the kids are going to play games anyway. Yeah. So you may as well do it in like a safe, constructive, and welcoming environment. Yeah. If they're gonna, if they're already in Discord servers, they're already going to play anyway. You may as well get them in a school Discord server, and you can monitor them so they don't bully each other. You can monitor them so they're communicating effectively and properly online. You can put them in a tournament format so their first experience with the tournament, isn't like the old game arena like I used to play in, a game space where people are just swearing and being angry at each other all the time. It's like a moderated way for them to learn, like, okay, this is how you act in a gaming tournament like this, with respect and saying GG and good luck, have fun, and just the niceties of stuff, rather than like your first competitive experience is like COD Warzone lobbies, or like Modern Warfare 2 lobbies was the old example, right? Of people just screaming at each other over the microphone like degenerates, which you don't want. That's where I grew up, but I feel like I had to learn myself out of that stuff, like in early Counter-Strike Source and in early Battlefield 2, the way that people would communicate and treat each other. It was not good at all. Like, it's the very simple way of saying it's not good. So like putting them in that constructive environment where they can like flourish and learn, like, this is how you act like a decent human being online, which is being a decent human being. I think it's like super positive, right? And they can, and there's lots of cool stories of like, people who don't have friends at school making friends because they talk about gaming stuff, like kids who aren't engaged with school going to school more often because they get to be part of something that they enjoy. Kids who may have like disabilities and can't represent the school in like soccer or football, but they put on a school jersey to play League of Legends, so they feel like inclusive, like they feel included as part of the school community, like all that kind of stuff. I talk about it all the time because we actually did a high school course for a year. We partnered with Wyndham Tech School here, and we taught Year 9 students how to run an esports tournament from start to finish during normal school time. They came for a whole term, and they came for half a day. Or just over half a day every Monday, like open until like 1 p.m. or something like that at the end of lunch. Yep. And they learn how to make an esports tournament from start to finish. And they got to skip maths and science to do that. I mean, how sick is that? But, it's about, they already like that kind of stuff. So it was about exposing them to the wider, like, this is what you can do besides being a pro player. And man, some of those kids, holy shit, they're so smart. One of the kids was telling me about like, he asked me if I invested in any crypto. He was telling me about this Lazy Lions NFT he bought, how he made a bunch of money off Sheeb. And then because he got into NFTs, he started reading the Ethereum white paper so he could understand the technology that's behind the NFT that he bought. And I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, you're like 14 years old. This is insane. Like, compared to, you know what I mean? But like,
did you say to him, you want to join big esports or what?
Yeah, you want a salary? You're on. Because like, I use the thing all the time when talking about that stuff. Like, I was in the chess club at school because that's what the other nerds did, and I hate playing chess. I've never enjoyed it at all, ever. I always used to try to do the 4-move checkmate. That was the only thing I would do, because if it worked, I felt like a king, but it would never work because people knew what you're trying to do. Was it 5 moves? I don't know. But I just had no idea, and I didn't enjoy it. I did the Lego robotics thing in school as well. You had to like program this little Lego robot with light sensors, has like these little light sensors, and it would follow like a black line around and then pick up a Yowie at the end.
Yep.
And like me and my best mate, we wrote it was like a code program that you had to like, code that in. We wrote the program that won like the state championships. We gave it to some Year 7 kids to go do because we thought it was cringe. The only reason we did it is because we got to go on computers and we would do it fast. And then we just, fuck around and look at Newgrounds, play Newgrounds, stick death games, and look at our Battlefield 2 stats and stuff like that. Just because we got to go on computers. But if I was able to like organize an esports tournament, I would have been so clicked on. And I did that in Year 12, like in my IT class, because we had to make a website that had like a backed directory or something. So I made like a BF2 tournament, and then I actually ran the thing, which was a disaster. But like, I would have been so much more engaged with school. I skipped so much school in Year 11 because I was doing maths, English, and science, and then a blood subject, which was sport. Like, how interesting is that? to like a 17-year-old, you know, like to look forward to every day when all I wanted to do was become the best in Australia at Battlefield 2. That's all I cared about at that stage. So if I could have someone come to me and be, Chris, you could make a bunch more money and be a lot less stressed if you ran BF2 tournaments instead of actually trying to be the BF2 pro gamer, I would have been like, holy shit, I'm in. Let's do it. So I would have like been much more engaged with school if I could do it in a way that, you know, was exciting to me, engaging.
Absolutely. And a lot of people want to be the face though. Like it's kind of tittering. It's kind of like waddling that line where you want to be the face and be the person that's winning those tournaments and have that fame. And because that's what we see. We don't see the people that are behind the camera filming up on the face, the close-ups of the players' faces. We don't see who brings all the shit together that's wearing the headset at the back with the notepad saying to Johnny over on camera 2 to focus the fuck up on player 1. You know what I mean? So being involved in it that way is another cool way. And at least that way, you're making money doing something that you fairly enjoy, which allows you to live the life that you want to live. And it's so important, man. It's so important. Back to your point about learning how to make a LAN party and stuff. Bro, at school, I went to an all-boys school, and we were always playing COD 4 on the laptops, just LAN party, one class versus the other class. And everyone join up. Yeah, join up this code. This is the server. This is the server. And it'd just be like a random Wi-Fi, like fuck or some shit. And you just join up onto it. Bang, you're in. And I learned that the year after we started doing that, they actually banned creating LAN servers on our computers at the school. But it was great, mate. It was the best fun ever. So I can definitely reflect on and relate to what you've just told me.
I feel like a lot of it is people just don't know that stuff exists. If you look at a lot of the people who've been around as long as me or longer, a lot of us started as a player before kind of quote unquote retiring, like say like Patrick Saddam or Khan from Fnatic, who was the captain of CS 1.6 for a long time. Or we realized that being a player wasn't actually a thing we wanted to do. We just really loved the game or games and wanted to be in that ecosystem instead. So like Nick Vanzetti, the old MD of ESL Australia, now the MD of ESL APAC or APJ or something like that, right? He was a Halo player, like a top-level Halo player in Australia. Started running Halo tournaments and then ran ACL Pro, then ran ASL. You know, me, I started off as a player in Battlefield 2, Bad Company 2, and CSGO, you know, some of the top teams in Australia, but never was going to make it on a global scale, wasn't good enough. But I get much more fulfillment and much less stress out of, you know, working on the business side of things. And there's so many stories about that. Like of old, you know, so often I'll talk to people who'd be like, yeah, man, I used to like be in top teams in Australia for like CS 1.5 and like all that kind of stuff. Yeah. The guy who does all the marketing for M-Wave in Australia, he went to the World Cyber Games with a team called iCore in Counter-Strike Source and got the best ranking of any Australian team ever in WCG in Counter-Strike.
Shit.
You know, just things like that. Lazy J was his gamer name. And yeah. You know, I think it's just because we didn't know that the other stuff existed. Yeah, we didn't know we could run LAN parties. We didn't know we could do audio visual. We didn't know we could do production. Like that kind of stuff just wasn't the knowledge to us at all. Because like you said, it's not the forefront of people's minds. People want to be the famous actor or actress or singer. Yeah. They don't necessarily want to be like the person who's like, you know, controlling all the audio visual for, you know, Stereosonic or something like that.
Oh, for sure. Oh, plus listen to the bangers that Stereosonic can sing Ziz from afar with a big camera. Woo!
Rip Stereo. Oh yeah, good old Ziz.
I never went.
You know, my girlfriend didn't know that Ziz had died. That was interesting. Yeah, I told her once. This was it was a few months ago, right? I was like, you know, it's the 10th anniversary of Ziz's death, and she was like, Ziz is dead. Why would you tell me that? I was like, it's not a spoiler alert. It's been 10 years. Yeah,
dude, and people are still talking about him. What the fuck,
dude? The most wholesome subreddit on all of Reddit is Ziz. I've seen a negative comment in that twice, and it was downloaded to absolute oblivion. Because I'm talking like some literal 12-year-old kid will post a flexing pic and say like, hey guys, I've just started lifting. What do you think? And he's just, you know, just a kid. Like he's, you know, he's been going to the gym for 1 week. He's done 3 bicep curls. And good. All the comments, super positive. They're like, you're going to kill it, King. Just eat more, keep working out hard. I believe in you. Like all the comments are like that. It's insane.
Stay away from pussy. They'll bring you back.
It's just like, I've never seen a subreddit so positive. It's insane.
What colour is your Bugatti?
Negative comment, any negative comment, which is just like, oh, kid, you suck, or like, you know, you look shit, like what's your lifting routine? Instant, just like 100 downvotes on it. Or 20 downvotes on it or something like that.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I've never seen a subreddit so positive. It's fantastic. Really? It's so good. Yeah, I suggest checking it out. Yeah, fact check me for sure. Go check it out.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, check that shit out. Okay, on Reddit, the Ziz. Yeah. Dude, I still can't believe how much of an impact he had on everyone. People New Age talk about it. I had some people on the podcast from overseas, and they know who Ziz is. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, one guy's opening up his own fitness brand in Sweden that I know, because of Ziz. He's his own entrepreneur. Christ. Like, and I'm like, oh, Ziz. I'm like, you're talking about Ziz from Australia? He's like, yeah, Ziz. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, dude,
damn, it's crazy too, because he's almost pre-social media. Like, he was pretty much on Facebook.
It was Facebook statuses.
Yeah, like a lot of people didn't really use Facebook. Like, it's just crazy that the legend lives on. After so long, after all this time, he's still so huge.
His brother's still around. Chess bra. Oh yeah, I saw him on Instagram not too long ago. Yeah, he's floating around a fair bit. And I don't know what he's doing nowadays. I think he's still in the fitness model industry, doing all that.
Yeah, the strongest jawline in the world, right? That guy.
Oh no, bro. Their fucking hair is just so muzz, isn't it? Like the good like fringe like plastered down the fucking forehead.
Yeah, I used to go to DEF CON every year. Definitely see a lot of Ziz type people at DEF CON.
The bum bag's making a comeback as well.
It is, man. I got one here. I got an Adidas bum bag sitting right next to me. I always bring in, because we're moving into this new studio at the moment. As you can see, it's like almost done. It's quite some stuff, but need to fix this stuff up to create some B2B content. And yeah, man, I got a specific bum bag I bring in because it's got the office keys in it. So
it's quite nice. I wouldn't be saying that too loud as well, because then they'll be just coming straight for that bum bag. But they also have to find the office location. But it's quite a nice office that you have there, man. I do enjoy that. You have your own office space, and it's kind of surreal. It's like when you're a pro player, or with me from my experiences of getting paid to go to events or flying around and on stages and stuff. It's super surreal about what you're living in right now. It's insane. It really is insane. Yeah. So congratulations to yourself with that.
Thanks, man.
I'm sure you walk around, you take a few deep breaths of air through your nostrils and out through the mouth, and you're like, holy shit, man, this is where we're at. We're here.
It's interesting, man. It's the whole, just understanding. I have a queued up post about it from like 2016 where I was like going crazy because one brand asked me for like advice on how to enter the industry.
Yep.
And it's like really easy to forget like where you came from and what you were doing before. And, we're like a team of like 7 now. They've got staff all over Australia. I've got staff who had babies who rely on their salaries to like, feed themselves. I've got staff who have house loans that rely on the salaries for that. Like, it's a big burden, I guess, to make sure that like you still run a business so people can pay their house loans and feed their kids and stuff. But also it's awesome that you're able to like come up with these ideas and do work and fund people off that. But it's so easy to forget those kind of things. And, I'm going through a stage as an entrepreneur. I hate that word, but, as a business person where we're signing bigger contracts and working with larger clients and help and needing to like realize the gravity of what that is versus like, I remember my first $5,000 sale, I was like so over the moon. But now it's like I make a much, much bigger sale than that. I remember doing one, I signed the contract, I had this big adrenaline rush and then it disappeared. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, fuck. I don't feel any different. Yeah. Like, people talk about that a lot if they, win a big deal or get a lot of money, like it's not, or they get the thing that they were aiming to get to, and then they were just like, oh, okay, I've done that, now what? So you need to find like your purpose and, be able to understand where you are and what you want to work on. And I'm still nowhere near as big as, I don't know, I'm in Playside, who listed in there hundreds of millions of dollars, and, got other friends who've friends with the chief revenue officer who was at FaZe and signed multi-million-dollar deals with McDonald's and stuff like that. It's just interesting to see how different people process like that kind of stuff that happens.
Is Playside in charge of the complexity? Is that the same CEO?
No. Oh, are you
Jerry?
thinking
Is his name
of
Jerry?
Are you thinking of Game Square?
Game Square. So I'm thinking of Game Square.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good.
Yep. Game Square's the publicly listed holding company. Justin Kenner, who's also an Aussie actually. He used to be FaZe's CFO, and that's when I met him, the chief financial officer, and now he's the CEO of Game Square. And then they bought Complexity, and they're part of them along with is it Jerry Jones or something like that?
Yeah,
who
he's
owns
like the CEO of the team, the Cowboys.
The Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like on their board and part of that too. And then they're the agency of record for the Cowboys as well.
Incredible story there. Hey, just before you go, I know, do you need to go right now, or Got another?
Yeah, and I got a little bit more time.
Sweet. What is, like, give me the basis about what your company actually does in layman's terms. So are you guys the company that go out there, get the deal, and you're the linking term between X party and Y party? Is that your whole concept, or what is it? Give me a bit of an understanding, as well as the people on the podcast listening or on YouTube listening and watching. Let us know.
Yeah.
Inform us.
Yeah, sure, man. So for us, we're essentially a marketing agency. That's a lot of the work we do. And I would say we're like a strategic marketing agency. So a lot of our core work is in digital marketing. So a company will come to us and say, hey, we want to do an influencer promotion. We want to do some promotion on social media. We'll help them out with that.
Yep.
A lot of the extra work that we do is the strategy side of it. So if you're working with like an established brand like EA and they're like, hey, we want you to launch Battlefield 12. They already know when the game's coming out, how much it's going to cost, who exactly they want to market to, how much they want to spend, what their targets are. So you just roll that out, and sometimes literally you just crunching Excel documents. Yep. You're like, okay, I know I need to work with 12 influencers. Jacko's one of them. I'm going to DM him. I already know how much I'm going to pay him. I'm going to give him an offer. And then like you do the work, and then we do the report, and that's it. A lot of the work that we do extra to that is a lot of strategy added into that too. So like with AxeLab, who's the developer of Veil VR, we're running the world's largest VR esports tournament right now. They've never done an esports tournament before. So they're working with like an esports company, which is like, you know, ESL, but much smaller size.
Yep.
And part of their questions is like, what format do we do for the finals? What pick and bans do we do? How do we, you know, what kind of venue do we need to find? What kind of production do we need to do? How do we need to ensure the game is competitively ready for that process? So what learnings can I take from my time playing CS or running CS tournaments or Battlefield or whatever, you know, to bring that across to them to things that make sense, like talking about pick and bans, the way that stuff works, talking about, you know, you can't just use the same setup that worked for a DJ because camera angles are not the same. And then figuring out with them, like, how the hell do you get 10 VR stations to work together on a stage? It's not easy, you know, that all this kind of stuff. Like, there's so much more strategic thinking about it. Or even with like a lot of the crypto companies that we've worked with, some of them are even to the point where it's like, Chris, how much do we spend on marketing and what do we do? So we like operate as their CMO. Like, we are Veil CMO right now. We handle all their marketing. There's like 14 suppliers that all work with us, you know, in regards to that campaign. So we do a lot of that extra strategic side of things. So rather than just rolling out a campaign that's already set for us, that, you know, we do that too. We worked with EA to launch their Jedi game back in 2019. But we also, and where I get the most fulfillment is doing that kind of work, that much more complexity, like complex style work, where they're like, how much do we spend on marketing? Or we don't really know who our users are. Can you help us? Or we don't really have a Twitter account. Can you set that up and make the post? Like that kind of stuff we really enjoy.
Yeah, it's great. And it's interesting that there are only few marketing companies out there like yourselves that, you know, have an understanding about how to set up a tournament and what direction you need to go and how to market it. Really, marketing it is the big issue. A lot of people don't really understand how to market a specific thing in a way that will get the return of investment for the companies that are investing in them. So, you know, it's good to see that there's a company like yourself and only a few out there that actually do it. So for you, you'd be fucking licking your lips, bro.
Well, if people want like some more business insight on that side of things, what I see is a huge rise in like niche agencies who are really good at their specific things they do. So we don't do PR. Like, I've done public relations as an employee. We've done it as a company, but we prefer not to. Like, we prefer to work with like Vicarious in the UK if it's like hardcore gaming, or like Sheldon Strategy. Sheldon does PR for like XSET and a whole bunch of other like big, you know, gaming and esports companies. TSM as well, they do their PR. You know, I'd rather just work with those guys to do that. We don't do paid media. So if you're wanting to do Google ads, Twitter ads, etc., I'll prefer you to work with us with like Symmetrics in the UK, especially for more crypto, or like United Esports in the US for more like gaming and creative style stuff. But what we will do really well is like run your social media, help you with your marketing strategy, doing all of your budgets and helping with suppliers, doing your esports side of things, you know, helping get influencers invest in you. You know, we helped an influencer invest $200K into a seed round for a crypto company and join us as an ambassador as part of that. Like, I much prefer that kind of side of things, you know. But we're seeing that huge rise in those niche agencies where it's like, if you need a specific events related company, like we're using an event supplier with this Miami Val Major that we're running. It's a guy who's been working with Riot since their second ever tournament, and he's like a lead consultant on that. Because like, you know, how many cameras do you need? I don't fucking know. I've got no idea. But I can help to balance the budget. I can help to be like, okay, you can convince me to use this many cameras because it's going to look like this or make the tournament better or whatever. Like I know how to like translate that language, right, into those other senses and how it works into their overall marketing plan. But I don't need to know like what exact search terms you should be doing on Google, like for the users. Like I don't need to get down in the weeds. I'd rather an expert come in and do that.
Absolutely. And as a personal question here, how would you market a podcast if you've ever done one before?
I mean, if you listen to the Joe Rogan example recently that he gave, because I listened to a lot of his obviously like MMA type podcasts and stuff because that interests me.
Yeah, they're great.
His example was you have to get people addicted. You got to do multiple a week. Yep. That was his main one. And, you know, he didn't market his podcast at all. Some other people use marketing terms. I ran a podcast, did 100 plus episodes and stopped because it wasn't hitting my goals anymore for what I wanted to do. But like a big thing for me was it wasn't about the views on my podcast. It was about the people I could connect with. Yeah. So I got to meet the CFO of FaZe because of that podcast. I got to meet the Chief Revenue Officer of FaZe. I got to meet Clinton Sparks, who was the head of business development that went off to make his own team, who like he produced Turned Down for What, by the way, by DJ Snake and Little John. And like he produced Lady Gaga's Born This Way album and things like that. So I got to meet him. I got to interview the CEO of Atari, the COO of Astralis. Like I don't think I would have got to meet any of these people if it wasn't for the fact of, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? It's about esports and gaming. Yeah. And I think you'd be a great guest. Here's an example of some other guests, etc. But I started off, my first episodes were like Nick from Chiefs when he ran Tainted Minds, was like Emma from Digivisor when they first made Go to Game. Like much smaller time guests, especially at that stage. You know, Tainted Minds were nothing. That's before they had investment, before they had like a few thousand Twitter followers, you know, compared to then I got to do the CEO of Atari and the head of finance at FaZe and the head of revenue at FaZe. And, you know, you kind of work your way kind of up from there. So, you know, part of it depends on the goals. Like what you want to hit. But, you know, I would say the consistency stuff makes sense, especially where content goes these days. But it's hard to justify. For me, it was hard to justify the effort of brain power was a lot of it. Because we do a lot of work with clients in the US, I could do a podcast at 8:30 a.m. and my brain is cooked after that. And like, how the fuck am I meant to do work for the rest of the day and like do business development and pitch to clients and I don't know, write a strategy or whatever when I just can't think anymore? Like I just thought, you know, I thought all the thoughts I could have for this day and my brain is cooked and it's like 9 a.m. and I'm like, well, fuck, how am I going to get through the rest of this day? About an hour.
Okay.
Hour to, 45 to an hour and a half.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can just look up the big esports podcast and you'll find that like everywhere pretty much. But like Anchor's one of the best places to find it. And it, you know, and it went through multiple iterations. It started off being really formal where I'd read a tagline about, you know, the Business Science podcast is about blah, 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 blah. Today is my guest, you know, and then get into it. And I would have set questions I would ask them.
Okay.
And then it got like a little bit slower. I listened to a little bit of Sam Harris stuff, and I think I took some inspiration from that. And then I started listening to a bit of Joe Rogan and a bit of some other podcasts where it became more like free flowing, and I might have general topics if they really push me, like especially a public company. They would be like, no, we demand to know at least part of what you talk about. So I'd write like, okay, here are the themes. And then that's usually as far as I would go.
Okay.
It's like I would have a notepad open with some themes in case I got lost.
Yeah.
And was like, didn't think of what to say. I would be like, oh, I really want to talk to this person about the general of like, how do you make sales in esports, or, you know, how do you choose a person to hire or something like that. I'd have that on Notepad.
Yeah. I get you. Like personally, I have like a few questions about your company and whatnot. But then the rest of that, it just bounces off whatever you talk about. You know, whilst you're talking, I take notes down about what you say and pick out key points, and then, you know, expand from that. The branches just to keep expanding and growing, and we keep listing on, and then we circle our way back around to the start again of where we began. Because you might segue talking about PC and ended up talking about cars, and then into fucking how you make wigs. You know what I mean? Like that's just where it goes. None of it's edited, nothing's cropped. That's just how it is. And I think that's just the easiest way to do it as well, from an editing perspective as well.
Man, it's so much quicker and easier. I mean, part of that's the Gary V example of what he would say is make one kind of parent. I never know the word, like one parent piece of content and cut that up as many ways as possible.
Yep.
So make like 1 hour and a half podcast, and then try to make like 100 clips out of that and post that out. For me, clips never worked on LinkedIn, but they definitely work on other platforms. Like you can see the JRE clips does really well. Any clips of any podcast does quite well. You see them on TikTok, you see them on YouTube, like whatever. I hate using Joe Rogan as an example all the time. He's so polarizing, but he's obviously like the biggest podcast in the world. So it's a pretty good example to use, like as a specific one.
I'll give you credit.
Yeah.
Chris, before I let you go, what's the, now I know this is the big question that I sometimes ask people, but what's your goal in the next 5 years? Where do you see yourself? I know it's 5 years. You could even say 2 years or 3 years. It's up to you. But what is the goal for yourself, and where you want to be when you're 36 or 37? I'm 31 right now.
Yeah. So for me, let's think about that. Obviously, there's some company goals which you can and can't talk about just around growth, but advancement of the company, becoming larger, doing work in more countries. For me personally, got some lifting numbers I'd like to hit. I'd like to deadlift at least 220, 240, like to squat 200 and bench 120. I could hit that in the next 5 years for sure. Probably before that. And then, I think those are the main ones for me. For me at the moment, like I go between, and I used to do like a little bit of like personal business coaching and stuff like that. But I go between like, do you set long-term goals? Do you not? And I'm kind of in a place at the moment where I'm not, like, especially when I was an employee in the past, for me, the goals were fairly easy because they were generally salary related.
Yep.
Like I always wanted to hit like 60 to 80K salary. Then I wanted to hit 100, then like 300, like whatever goals you have. Right. And you might want to own certain things or stuff like that. But now that's not as relevant to me. I still have some personal salary goals and some company size goals, but they're not so much for sharing. But for me, it's more like looking at the next 3 to 6 months of the business and where we want to be right now. But we are doing some planning of like products that we want to make, and those need to be like 1 to 2 to 3 years kind of thing. But I'm a big fan of like building small things and testing them and then seeing what happens. Like, an example is we made a company called Shade Crew in 2018, which was a failed startup for us. We tried to make like a phase clean house in Australia. Yep. We lost some money on that, but not a lot, to be honest. And we did that when we had the house for 3 months or so. Tried it, didn't work, cut our losses, tried something else over that period of time. So I'm a big fan of like throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks while maintaining those long-term relationships, because you never know what's going to come around. Like my first deal with Axlab was tiny. They were finishing a second crowdfund, and we did like a 30K deal with them. And then they were doing like an NFT launching game. The deal was much larger than that. And this beta launch deal is much, much larger again. So I've been working with them for 2 years now. We helped them with the Series A. I've been to Miami twice to go see Jono, hung out with him a lot. Given a lot of advice, woken up at 4 a.m. to help them with a VC pitch, all that kind of stuff. So like I really enjoy like those long-term kind of, development of friendships and contracts and contacts too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate.
Thanks, man.
It's been a great talk, and I was always looking forward to this one because everyone that I have on, I always learn a lot from. I take a bit from with their opinion or whatever they have to say about advice on things as well. So I'm glad that I could get that from you and have your time today, this afternoon. Is there any closing comments that you'd like to shout out before you head off?
No, man, I was going to say like that's why I stopped doing the podcast for me, because I felt that I wasn't getting a lot out of it anymore, and I didn't feel like super motivated to do my own podcast. So then I was like, well, why the fuck would people want to listen to it? If I'm not. So I think that's like the perfect reason, other than views or whatever other metrics or goals that you have with it. Like I think that's a fantastic thing for you to get access and ability to talk to those people.
Yep.
I think it's a fantastic place to start. So yeah, you're in it for the right reasons, man. And I've always enjoyed, we had a bit of tit for tat backwards on Twitter for a long time before we actually started like DMing each other. I've always really enjoyed like the stuff that you do. So it's good to chat. It's good to meet at Dreamhack, albeit very briefly, and do the Arnold handshake together.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully there's plenty more of that. And when I get my new car, we can go for a cruise together.
Ooh, there we go. What are you getting?
I don't know yet. Probably a CLA 45, I would say.
Very nice.
My investors are all AMG people, so if I got an Audi, they would probably murder me in my sleep. So I got to look at some sort of Mercedes.
There we go. Love that. Maybe spoil yourself and do a 63. C63.
Oh yeah, my Jerry used to have a really nice 63 with the number plate 1UP. I always loved that.
Love that. Mario fan,
he has 1UP and he has PS5. So I thought they were two pretty funny number plates.
Conflict of interest there, Nintendo and Sony. But anyway, we'll let that one slide. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. You can find the visual to see Chris's gorgeous face on youtube.com/JackoGFreak. Everything else will be at audioboom.com/GFreak speaks. But that is it. Thank you so much for coming by. All Chris's links will be in the description below. And until next time, remember to be safe, stay swell, and as always, Boom Baby. Peace.